All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle one of the biggest, most fundamental questions in all of science. Where does non-life end, and where does life actually begin? But what if I told you that sharp line you're imagining? What if it isn't really there at all? Let's find out.
So let's kick things off with a classic paradox, a virus. Now, according to most of our biology books, it isn't technically alive, and yet it evolves, it adapts, and it has pretty much conquered every single ecosystem on this planet, ruthlessly rewriting the book of life as it goes. Okay, now let's compare that to something we'd all agree is definitely not alive. A crystal. You know, deep in some cave, a crystal is growing. It's making copies of itself. And when a piece breaks off, it passes on its core information, its atomic structure, to its children. So, we call one of these lifeless matter. But why, exactly? I mean, they both reproduce in a way. They both store information, and they both pass it on. This right here, this contradiction, is the mystery we're going to try and unravel today. All right, so to really get into this, let's start with the standard textbook definitions of life. And you're going to see just how quickly that neat, tidy line starts to get really, really blurry. Yeah, you remember these from biology class, right? Life reproduces. It responds to what's going on around it. It has a metabolism to keep itself from falling apart. And it grows. Seems pretty straightforward. On the surface, anyway. But what about a simple flame? Think about it. A fire grows, right? It has a metabolism. It converts fuel into energy. It responds to its environment. A gust of wind changes it. And it can reproduce. It can spawn new fires. By our own definitions, fire's kind of alive. And this is where our nice, neat categories start to crumble. So if something as simple as fire can challenge the rules, what happens when we look at the really strange stuff, the entities at the very edge of biology? Oh, yeah. This is where it gets weird. Just take a look at this number. That's a 10 with 31 zeros after it. That is the estimated number of individual viruses in our oceans alone. These so-called non-living things are by far the most abundant biological entities on the entire planet. And don't think for a second they're just passively floating around. Oh no, a virus executes a precise, multi-stage invasion. It's like a microscopic heist. It attaches to the perfect target cell, tricks its way inside, completely hijacks the cell's internal factory to make copies of itself, and then, boom, bursts out to start the whole process over again. This isn't just random chemistry. That's a strategy. And their strategy has layers. Research is showing that viruses perform a kind of cost-benefit analysis. Is the host cell healthy and full of resources? Awesome. Let's replicate like crazy. Is the cell stressed out and weak? Okay, maybe it's better to lie low, go dormant, and wait for a better opportunity. That's not a mindless machine. That's a decision-making process. And if you thought viruses were strange, well, let me introduce you to prions. These are just proteins. That's it. No DNA, no RNA, nothing. A prion is just a protein that's folded the wrong way, and it acts like a bad influence, bumping into other normal proteins and forcing them to copy its corrupt shape. It's literally infectious information. It's memory gone wrong. So this idea of strategy and intelligence without a brain, it goes way beyond viruses. Let's look at organisms we know for a fact are alive, but that show off some incredible smarts without a single neuron. Let's talk about the slime mold. It's basically one giant single cell. In a famous experiment, scientists arranged oat flakes in the same pattern as the subway stops around Tokyo. The slime mold grew out to connect all of them, and then it pruned itself back, leaving behind a network that was almost identical to the actual human-engineered subway map. It figured out the most efficient design all on its own. But it gets even stranger. Scientists trained a slime mold to avoid an unpleasant substance. Then, they fused that trained mold with a naive one that had never encountered it. The knowledge transferred instantly. The new, naive part of the mold immediately knew to avoid the substance. Just think about what that means. Memory isn't just an idea in a brain. It can be a physical substance that you can literally share. And this brainless intelligence can operate on an absolutely massive scale. This number? That's the size of the largest known organism on Earth. It's a single honey fungus in Oregon. It is a vast underground network that's basically managing the entire forest's resources, treating nutrients and sending information between trees. So we've seen that the line is blurry even inside the world of biology. But what happens when we find these same lifelike behaviors in systems that are purely physical? Consider a hurricane. I know, it sounds a little crazy, but check this out. It has a metabolism, right? It feeds on the heat energy from the ocean. It maintains a coherent structure, its eye wall. It actively preserves itself against the environment. And it can even reproduce by splitting in two, just like a dividing cell. It's checking an awful lot of the boxes for life. We've explored biology and we've explored physics. Now let's push the boundary one last time into the most abstract world of them all, the world of pure information.
You know, digital life has been evolving for decades now. Back in the 90s, a program called Tierra had simple bits of code that spontaneously evolved their own digital parasites and immune systems. By the 2000s, digital organisms in another system called Avita evolved the ability to perform math simply because it gave them a survival advantage. And today, we have robots that can create a mental model of their own bodies and then adapt if they get damaged. That's a kind of computational self-awareness.
So after looking at infectious proteins, brilliant slime molds, living storms, and pure code, we get to a new conclusion. Maybe the problem isn't the definition of life. Maybe we've been asking the wrong question the whole time. Maybe the question isn't, is a virus alive? Maybe a better question is, what is a virus? It's not really a thing. It's a persistent pattern of information that has figured out how to make more copies of itself by hijacking other living things. And that giant fungus? It's not just a thing either. It's a pattern of distributed intelligence. It's a physical network designed for processing information and making decisions across a huge landscape. A hurricane isn't just a storm. It's a self-sustaining pattern of energy that maintains its own identity against the forces of chaos. It's like a temporary organism born from heat and air. And that brings us to this final thought. What if life isn't a state of being, some special property that some things have and others don't? What if life is a pattern that matter falls into, a pattern of information that learns how to persist and replicate? From this perspective, life isn't a noun, it's a verb. It's something the universe does. And perhaps we and everything else we've looked at today are all just different expressions of that same universal process.